I'm very happy to see that many people showed up, but I'm even more happy that the spouses show up because this is a family affair here. And those members who come to union meetings know that I always stress the importance of family. And when it comes to your retirement and everything that's even your work, that you should be involved in that. So thanks for showing up. We'll start out with our health insurance, Teamsters Local 638 health insurance, and that will be for all the full-time UPS and if there's any white paper contracts in there. We have Colin Garrity from Wilson McShane. They are our third-party administrator. Some of you might know him or at least talk to him or his office. So, Colin?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Should we get a little let's go wild. All right. As Trevor said, my name's Colin Garrity. I work with Wilson McShane Corporation. We're the third-party administrator for the Teamsters 638. That is specific to the full-time, as Trevor mentioned. We have folks from Team Care here as well, focusing on the retirement benefits of the part-time population. So, have a PowerPoint here. I'll go through this. Feel free to, ask questions. Pretty informal, my presentation style, so I don't want you to forget them. So I always say this is your meeting, so I want to make sure all your questions get answered. And I always end this the same way, as I don't disappear off this stage. So if you ever get home and you have other questions, call us, call me, and we're happy to help you guys through it. So first of all, even if you guys haven't yet, you're staring down retirement. Congratulations. That's a lot. There's a lot that comes along with that, so hopefully we're able to answer some of your questions here, get you guys prepared as we move forward. So, without further ado, what Wilson McShane is. What we do for the fund is we receive the employer contributions, laid out in your collective bargaining agreement, and then we generate that eligibility. When we generate the eligibility, we then send those to the different providers that are in the plan. We have them listed up here as Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. Optum RX is your pharmacy benefit manager. And then Delta Dental. VSP is also who you have your vision provider through as well. The bottom one is a bulk of what the work that we do, which is paying the claims. You guys are what's called a self-insured health and welfare plan, which means we don't actually purchase a product from Blue Cross Blue Shield. The fund itself is its own insurance plan, and we basically pay the claims on behalf of the individual. So medical and dental claims we pay, as well as disability and items like that. So we are your main point of contact as it relates to this plan. We are headquartered in Bloomington. However, we do have offices all over in St. Paul, Duluth, Milwaukee, Chicago, Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, and Las Vegas. We have dedicated team people. So if you call our office, tell them who you work for. Say you're with Teamster 638, and then ultimately we'll direct you in the right place. With people who are staring down retirement, what you're going to ask for is to talk to someone in eligibility or accounts receivable. Those are the ones and people that actually handle our application process. We do have a fund website. If you haven't been out there, you can go out there, take a look at some of the plan documents that I'm discussing today. It also lists some of your contributions that are out there, and then ultimately, if you do go on the retiree plan, we also track the payments up there. I have a couple of exhibits that show that. This is the website and the splash page. Like every other retired person, look at how happy they are. It's intentional. So everything's out there. We have all the different links for all the different providers that I talked about, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Delta, that kind of thing. Use this site even if you're still active. I mean, not everybody here is for sure going to be retiring. You may be working for a while longer, and this site is a good site for informational purposes. I have a slide here that is specific just to a retiree show. It's very small, obviously, but all it does is show that we're tracking on your self-payment. So we show some of the demographic individuals. You have to log in under your ID and number, and it'll walk you through that right when you log in. So what I'm talking about here today, for the most part, is non-Medicare. So those that are not yet Medicare age and are going to be retiring from the plan. The requirements to retire under the plan are, you have to be eligible for Essential States pension or UPS pension. Okay, and part of that, I'll get into how we require that and what information we need from that. But basically, it just shows that you guys are in fact retired. The second one is an obvious one, that you've made your initial self-pay, which just is the rate, and I'll get into the rates, what those costs are, and how those can be paid into us. The requirements are fairly simple outside of a pension. You can retire from 50 to 54. You need 20 years of service in that instance. And outside of that, so in other words 55 up to Medicare eligibility, there is no service requirement. So ultimately you need to be vested with the pension. 9 times out of 10 that's about a 5-year vesting. So those are the requirements that the plan requires for you to do. Here's the monthly premium for coverage. So ages 50 to 54, $350, 55 to 59, $300. 60 to 64. I see everybody writing feverishly. That's fine. We can also send you out an application that will have these on there as well. And then we have a footnote there if you wish to continue your dental and vision benefits. That's another $154.95. These rates are just that. So that doesn't mean that the member pays $350 and the spouse pays $350. This is an all-in rate. That's even inclusive if you have children that aren't quite 26 yet, which means they're still eligible under the plan. So you could have your children, your spouse, everything like that, say you're the 55 to 59, all-in rate $300. If you're sitting on a bar stool and you're talking to the person next to you, they won't believe you when they tell you tell them their rate. It's just unheard of. So it's a great benefit. As the active working population, there's an inherent, what we call a subsidy to that, which basically means that the true cost of that coverage obviously is not $300 for the benefits that you buy, okay? That cost is more like $2,300, right? Old people are expensive. There's no other way to say it. But ultimately, when we say subsidy, what that means is, say the normal cost is $2,300, we charge you $300, that subsidies that extra $2,000. Again, you're all part of a brotherhood, and the active population is what makes up that difference, in case you're wondering how you do that. So this is part of your retirement. So when we talk retirement, it's not just about pension. It's about your health and welfare as well. So a great benefit, a great rate, nonetheless. We have footnoted here, though, you are set in those rates. So in other words, if you retire on the 55 to 59, when you turn 60, your rate doesn't go down to 250. So you stay static there. Don't hang your hat on these forever. From time to time, the trustees will look at these and reevaluate them and increase them over time. We've seen them from $25 to $50. It's not going to quadruple out of the gate. So I always tell people, if I do these presentations, you say, oh, this is what the rate was. Well, the rates do change. Insurance costs overall will increase, and ultimately, some of those are borne by you guys, the retirees. So the application process, simple, like I said, was call Wilson McShane. Our information is on the website. It also is up here. You complete and contact us and say, I'm looking to retire. We ask that you call us about 60 days ahead of time. It allows a few things. One, for us to get the paperwork out to you, have some good communication, and then also get some of that paperwork back from Central States that we look for. And then we have a payment option. You can cut a check to us, or we can do an actual ACH. And what that means, it's kind of the set it and forget it. We actually debit your account each month, so you don't even have to worry about it. Of course, everybody has fancy banks now, and you can set up a bill pay option as well. This is the initial letter that we'd send out to you. It talks through, congratulations, you're staring down retirement. We talk about the award letter that we want from your pension. A lot of people don't know what that is because you only retire once, right? So it's not something that's pretty common. So we have an example up here, and ultimately, folks in your pension, we also call it a commencement letter. All it does is very specific. It says your benefit starts this day, this is the amount of your benefit. And that's ultimately what we use as a qualifier to make sure that you're retiring from the plan. This is the application itself. It talks about the eligibility requirements that I already reviewed. as well as has the listed rates at the bottom there. I know those are hard to see, but ultimately, those are just the 3 age thresholds I was talking about earlier. And then the 2 different options are, one is continuing with the dental and vision for $154. This is the ACH form. So basically you complete this if you did want us to pull directly from your account. Most people do like to do that. It's just easier. You know, it syncs up well with your pension. We pull it on the first, similar to, you know, when your pension payments would get into your account as well. So just kind of an easy set it and forget it. If the rates do change, we automatically change those. We'll send notices to you guys, but we'll change that pull as well. We do have an opt-out provision, and that sounds just like it is. You can go from active coverage under this plan and opt out. And the option there is you can opt out and go under your spouse's coverage. So say your spouse has potentially insurance that's offered through their employment, and you guys want to save the $300 to $200, whatever it is. You, part of this, contact our office. We have you complete a form. You say, I'm opting out. When you're ready to come back, fill out a form you want to opt back in. We'll ask for just a couple things. We ask for proof of that other insurance, just to make sure that you've been insured the whole time while you're off, and then you're able to opt back on. So it ultimately, usually that trigger is a qualifying event, so your spouse were to retire or have a reduction of hours, things like that. That enables you to opt back into the plan. And again, we ask that on that one, again, give us at least 30 days for you to come back into the plan. So the program itself, I'm getting into a little bit of the schedule of benefits. We don't have to dive too far into the weeds, but ultimately the coverage that is for, sometimes you hear of active coverage versus retiree. Generally, it's the same benefits. You get medical, prescription, and then if you select that dental and vision, there are the same benefits as the active population, with the exception of there's no disability, right? You're disabled enough, you're retired. And then there's no life insurance. So those 2 pieces we strip out of it, but outside of that, they're the same exact benefits as the health plan. I included in here, but we don't really need to get into it. You guys see this every year. This is what's called the Summary of Benefits and Coverage, SBC. Talks a high level about the schedule of benefits that you guys have, which are incredible. Any plan that has a maximum out-of-pocket of $500 is pretty impressive. Your deductibles are $100 and $200, and those are included in the out-of-pocket max. So again, you see this every December 1st of the year. Termination of coverages. So we just get into what would ever cause us to not be able to offer this insurance to you. If you fail to make the monthly payment, we'll have to terminate coverage. We'll send you notice. We'll call you. We'll try to knock on your door as much as we can. Or you decide retirement's not for you, and you go back to active employment. The third is the Medicare eligibility piece. And basically what, like I talked about in the beginning of this, is I was speaking about non-Medicare eligibility. That's what's covered under the plan. Once you become Medicare eligible, which is the first of the month in which you become Medicare eligible, so typically when you turn 65, you'll be transitioned off the plan. Non-Medicare dependents also will be transitioned off the plan. So everything that gets triggered is based on that participant. Let's talk about that a little bit. So say the member themselves turns 65, and spouses, 60, kids, whatever the case may be. Everybody's off the plan in that instance when they turn Medicare eligibility. Okay? The non-Medicare dependents will be given the option of COBRA, and they can continue on the plan in that matter. Conversely, if the member is 60 and the spouse turns 65, the member can stay on, kids can stay on, but that spouse that turns 65 is transitioned off the plan. And I'll get into Medicare options, but that is the difference. So when you guys are talking to each other ages, have a good understanding of how that works. Ultimately, it's poor experience for the plan. Everybody pays into Medicare for their whole lives. You should use it. The plan and the benefits we have obviously are geared towards having coverage for people who are working and non-Medicare. You want people to use that Medicare benefit once they get into that age. Any questions on that? Sometimes people have some. Yeah.
Do you have the cost for Cobra?
I don't offhand, yeah, I got a slide on that. No, I don't know. Yeah, sorry, don't hold me to it, but I want to say it's right around 1,500 or something like that. That's not subsidized at all. So that is it's a good question and a game changer at that. So that's the Medicare population. What we do when you do get close to 65, be it the spouse or the member itself, we will, about 60 to 90 days, I think 90 days is what my slide says here, we'll send you out a packet of information. And we work with, as you know, Blue Cross Blue Shield, so we'll offer you a supplemental plan. Supplemental plan, and trust me, geez, when you get 65, you'll be inundated with paperwork, all these different options that are out there. This is the one the plan offers, and we offer it because we have such a history with Blue Cross that it is kind of a preferred rate. They know we're going to be kind of communicating it and funding or funneling people to their plan, so they offer a little bit of a discounted rate. But ultimately, we send it out. If you choose to take it, you don't have to. You complete the application, it comes back to us. We then send that over to Blue Cross, and then it's just really a dance between you and Blue Cross. We no longer are involved in the payments or anything like that. Your coverage, because it's an insured product, is directly with Blue Cross, and it's a true supplemental plan. So you'll hear Advantage plans, you'll hear all this other stuff. This is a true supplemental plan, which means it picks up the cost for anything that's not covered by Medicare. So if Medicare coverage is going to offer a certain benefit, that remaining 20%, that's what's covered by the supplemental. So when I say covered by everything, don't expect like, if normal insurance doesn't cover something, this plan is going to cover it. That's not the intent. It picks up that bridge between Medicare. This is the form that we send out that I'm talking about. The letter talks about when your coverage would be ending, so essentially when you become Medicare eligible. Talks about the rates, the premium, current premiums $365.50. Again, if you're wondering, boy, that's higher than all the other rates. Again, it really just shows how low those self-pay rates are on the Medicare population. This again is the, the supplemental plan. Again, just some of the questions and forms that we talk about for the enrollment in this plan and the different premiums that do come in from Blue Cross once you're set up under that. So in summary, again, really just transitioning here, retiring transmission from active to Medicare. Contact us, Medicare population, we'll reach out to you as well. If you ever have questions throughout any of this, call our office anytime. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit already. I got the retirement letter and all that stuff filled out. Didn't say anything about my health care insurance, so I'm only 20 days out. You're not going to give you 90 days notice.
Okay. 28 days out, is that what you said?
Well, May 31st is my day.
Call us like now. I mean, actually, we're not there today. So. But in all honesty, call us. I mean, we got an email. We can send you out the app. You can complete it. You can send it back to us and try to get you up and going as quick as possible.
Yeah, none of that information was really on there.
Well, when you say you were retiring, are you talking from the pension side of things? None of this was in there?
Yeah, I got my confirmation letter and everything.
Yeah, so we're totally separate.
Right.
Okay, so when I'm referencing like this pension letter, that's sent by Central States or UPS.
Yeah.
Completely separate from Wilson McShane. That's why we require that as kind of a trigger. And they're not gonna, and it's a good question that we're talking about. So even though you contact Central States or UPS, they don't turn around and call us, okay? You gotta do a little legwork, so you gotta contact us if you want the health insurance as well. But first thing Monday, give us a call and we can start getting through these forms.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
When you say call our office, I'm sorry I came late, is that Wilson McShane?
Correct. Yep. 952-854-0795. Google, and we can do that. Any other questions? Yep.
So if most people retire at the end of the month, but since the company pays our benefits on a weekly basis, if we retire the second week of month, how do we bridge?
Very good question. You don't have to, don't worry about it. We'll cover you through the end of the month and we'll start you up on the first of the next month. Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard that, so your eligibility and your contributions are on a weekly basis. So his question was, what happens if my coverage ends the middle of the month? And then this is obviously monthly coverage. What we'll do is we'll continue that coverage automatically through the end of the month, so those remaining 2 weeks, and get you transitioned onto the retiree plan on the first after that.
So they're gonna pay me out for 5 weeks vacation, and I'll get that in June? Is that, do they?
See, that's still coverage. I mean, so if you're, yeah, you'd have coverage all the way through that. You wouldn't have to go on to the retiree plan until after that, because vacation has contributions to the health plan.
Right, so that, yeah.
You just buy yourself some time. You needed it. Yeah.
How different are the rates for the Wilson McShane versus the Medicare?
Well, I had it up, so ours range from 350 to 250. The Medicare rate's 365.
For that or that?
Yeah, 365 is all in. Yep.
At 365, is that a Medicare Part A, B plan?
Yep,
Combination.
correct. Yep.
This
You still,
technically
so
would be a Medicare Part C because it combines A and B in a different form.
So with that senior gold plan, you do still have to purchase Part B. So it's you purchase Part B and then you get the Medicare supplement on top of it. So like I said, keep in mind these non-Medicare rates are very low. A lot of people, you know, we used to have a trustee that talked about it quite a bit. He just couldn't believe it when he moved from non-Medicare to Medicare, just because of how low your guys' rate is and how subsidized it is. So.
So that 365, it's Medicare Part A and B, it doesn't include like prescription drugs, which would be Part B.
You know, it has prescription in it as well.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll send you in all that packet, it'll have all that stuff laid out. Absolutely.
Does that include both the wife and the spouse and the?
The 365?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that is an individualized rate. Yeah, not composite. Yep.
So I know you said that, I just want to clarify. So if the member is retiring, but the spouse is under 65, say 55, then they are off, they have to do COBRA, correct?
If the member's 65, yes,
So yeah, once he gets 65,
correct.
then the wife is off.
Correct.
And the kids or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify. Thank you.
This is something that you had said at the Stewart seminar, and just to clarify, you had said that there was a new coverage, say, like an active member if they pass away, the spouse is entitled to 5 years.
Yep.
Retiree, is that in there at all for them?
Retiree, they're covered for 60 days.
For 60 days?
Yeah, so his question, he's a well-attended person, he was also at the Stewart Seminar, I presented there, a new benefit that was recently added to the active population is if a member passes away, the spouse and eligible dependents can continue on the plan for 5 years. His question was relative to the actual retiree population and if there's anything in that regard. And we will cover you for an additional 60 days. So prior to that transition to COBRA. Good questions. Yeah.
Transitioning back to the 365 supplemental plan, you said it's individual. Once you're, is the spouse eligible for that same supplemental plan, not just the retiree?
Correct. When they're Medicare eligible.
When the
age.
Medicare eligible, they
Yes.
allow them to purchase that stuff.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
The COBRA option, is that an 18-month option, or is it longer for this plan?
36 for
36 over years, okay.
So on that affects that plan to get the 365, the member retires at 65, but the wife has got 1 more year. When she turns 65, can she get that or?
Yes, yep, that was his question. So again, the questions are about the Medicare supplement plan that's offered through Blue Cross. Obviously, you guys don't turn 65 on the same time, so the question is when the member goes on and the spouse doesn't turn 65 for a year or so, can they then go on to that Medicare supplement? The answer is yes. Yep.
So I'm 63 right now. Say My wife's gonna turn 65 fairly soon. So if I passed, supposedly she would have 60 months be beyond, but I assume once she hits 65, her insurance would just
Yeah.
continue?
So your question is if within that 5-year period, she hits 65? Yeah, they would have to transition off the plan. Yeah. So another one over here, I thought.
Talking about the member passing away, say the member is 64 years when he passes away, and the spouse is, say, 60, will she still can get that for 5 years, even though the member wouldn't?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as, again, he's active population, not retired. Great question. Yeah, very good point. So, Tom had a great question up here. I should have hit on it more with that dental vision piece. When we're talking about it, and that is done strictly at the election time. So when you complete your application, it's a one-time option to continue that dental and vision. So in other words, if you don't take it, suddenly a need for dental, you can't call us and say, hey, I want to add my dental. That's just not the case. So it's a one-time shot. You have to do it at application process, and you either take it or you don't take it, one time.
That's $154
That's monthly, and it's, again, just one rate for you and your spouse, and it's the same benefits as the actives.
So if you opt out of the plan, at the time you're retired, you can still cover under your spouse, when you be active. And then at some point you need to opt back in, or you give them the chance to do the enrollment in the vision and dental. at that
Yes,
point.
yep. He's asking if you opt out and you opt back in, can you do the dental and vision? And the answer is yeah. I mean, that's all during that same election process. But I'll tell you what, when I do talk to retirees, I tell them, do a little bit of the math too. I'm not saying it's too expensive, but sometimes people don't use dental that much. So, you're paying $154.95, 12 months, you're right around $1,800. The benefit of the plan's $2,000 every year. But that is $2,000 for you, $2,000 for your spouse, so you are getting bang for your buck. But ultimately, that's just a personal choice on what you select. If you even need vision benefits, it's up to you guys. So, yep.
With the health insurance part of it, you can opt out can you opt out once and come back in? Is there a limit on the number of times you can opt in and opt out within one?
It's pretty rare. I mean, that would happen, but I don't know that there's a necessary time limit to that, no. But again, the opting out option is only really specific to your spouse's plan. If you have coverage through your spouse. There's not, you can't go to the healthcare exchange or anything like that. We don't have any of those options. It's specific to your spouse's plan. So essentially, to go through your hypothetical there would be you're opting out, your spouse has coverage, they retired, they potentially then later get another job and have insurance. I mean, I guess would be your question. So fairly rare, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to opt out again.
So if you opt into the vision and dental and you have dependent children yet, once they have reached 26, can then you cancel the vision and dental, or are you?
Yeah, you can drop the dental and vision at any time.
Okay.
Yep.
So the Medicare was $365. I thought it said in 2022. How much does that go up per year on?
I don't know. It varies. There's been years we've seen it flat. There's been years we've seen it increase $100. It just varies. So. Back to can you drop the dental and vision? Again, once you drop it, you can't add it back. It's just at one time. Yep.
If you start your pension and you work another job, can you keep the health benefits?
Yes. Yep. He's asking if you have another job and you have insurance, can you keep these planned? You can. You have to pay, obviously, your self-pay, but yeah. Great questions. Any more?
So working on that, I know if I opt out, it's based on my spouse's plan covering me, whether I can opt back in again. How about if I continue working and I had a plan through my, if I retire, collect pension, work, have.
Other insurance through another employer?
Yeah, I can opt out because of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and then if I leave that place, opt back in.
Yeah. Here's another one.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about calling Will's Machine 60 days before retirement.
Mhm.
And I would be retiring at the end of November, and I sent money to her. My wife's gonna be 65 next month. So we are covered if that time, if it's during that time that I need to let them know that about the supplemental insurance or whatever we decide to go with at that time.
Yeah, so his question is basically when he's going to be going on the non-Medicare retiree plan, but his spouse is going to be Medicare eligible age, we'll send you everything. So we'll send you.
I'm older than she is. I mean,
Oh, I thought it was the other way.
I'm already 65. She'll be 65 next month.
Okay,
So, but
so we'll send it to you when
I
you
don't know
retire.
about Medicare yet until,
Yep.
but then let them know a couple months ahead of time.
Yep, absolutely. Contact us, we'll send you that Blue Cross information and get you transition onto that if you want to. So his question, and it's a good one, we talk so much about Medicare here, as long as you're active, you will stay on the plan. You don't have to worry about any of this business with Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Senior Gold and all that stuff. If you are active, so even after 65 and you're 68, you're still working and you're still throwing boxes around and stuff, you're active on that plan, you'll stay, okay? The moment you transition off, that's when you call Medicare, that's when you call us and get other plans set up.
Any ballpark figure with Medicare being as far as?
I don't know offhand, you gotta call Medicare. 170, he said on there.
Just for
So,
Part B.
the members, let's say the member's 58, the wife is 65. And he's active. And so then he retires when he's 62. Still not Medicare eligible. Once he becomes Medicare eligible, then the wife needs to take the Medicare, then too.
If the wife is older,
Past it.
I thought you were saying she was past 65?
Well, let's say right now, 50, he's 58, she's 65. He's active. He retires when he's 62. So she's now,
68, yep.
Then when he retires, does the wife still stay on his, or has to take the Medicare?
Has to take the Medicare,
But up until he retires.
correct. Yep. She's covered on the active plan.
So, I'm, again, a couple years younger than my wife. She's gonna turn 65. So she goes on Medicare. She has to get her, until I retire, she can't get my senior gold rate.
She can get the senior gold rate, yes.
Oh, she can't.
Yep.
As long as I'm active. Whatever.
Well, if you're active, you're going to be covered on the plan, as will she.
Right.
When you go on to the retiree plan, she'll be offered that same Medicare supplement senior gold.
It's my understanding that once you turn 65, if you don't start purchasing a supplemental Part B plan at that time, and wait, even if you're active, that the rates are going to go up later, Part B and Part D. Is that true? Is that correct? And is that true for also the supplemental plan that the Blue Cross offers? So if you continue working until you're 70, say, is that rate higher?
So, this question is about Medicare. Now, I'm no Medicare expert, but I will tell you this. When you go off your Medicare, or your active plan, 638 plan, and you go on to Medicare, buy Part B right now. If you don't buy Part B, you will get hit with big penalties and costs and things like that, which is what you're talking about. So, get that Part B right away, otherwise there's a lot of penalties that go along with that.
But you don't have to buy it, like say, you continue working until you're 68. You have to buy the Part B
No.
while you're working.
Yep, not-
Just that-
Correct. While you're active, you don't have to purchase the Part B. It's when that active coverage ends that you need to purchase the Part B. So there's actually a coordination that even happens there. While you're an active participant and you're Medicare eligible, the plan would be primary, so we pay the first claims, and then any secondary role would actually go to Medicare on a Part A basis, which means you're buying, on your back in a hospital. That's part A. Part B is the office visits and kind of what people typically use.
Are you going to have discussions similar to all of this for part-timers?
Yeah, team care's here. Yep, right there. It's right next to you.
You said that dependents were eligible up to 26 years of age. Is there any other requirements to make them eligible? 26 years of age and in school, or?
Yeah, no, that's part of ACA, Affordable Care Act, is that they're covered up to 26.
Hey, so, on the Medicare supplement insurance, you know, 365, is that per person? Okay.
Sorry. That's what I said, your rates are great. Any others? All right, like I said, I don't disappear, call our office if you need any help, any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Often we're asked, when I'm ready to retire, do I get paid off my vacation? So I always predicate that answer on the fact that I'm going to maximize my earning potential till the last day. I'm not going to leave anything on the table. I've worked here for X amount of years, and I'm going to take everything that I have coming to me, okay? And you may be so sick of the work there that you'd leave the minute you could. If you forgot your car, they can have it. But I always predicate this conversation with, I'm going to maximize my earning potential until the last day. So how do we earn vacation? We earn vacation from our anniversary date to our anniversary date. If you're full-time, it's your full-time anniversary date. If you're part-time, it's your part-time anniversary date. Once you turn full-time, your part-time date doesn't mean anything for vacation. It's going to mean something for your number of weeks of vacation, and it's going to mean something for your pension. But remember, once you made that transition to full-time, it's your full-time date. So when you leave, the date is the most important thing. If I transitioned to full-time or became full-time off the street early in the year, you know, I'm going to have that accrued vacation available to me earlier in the year. If I have an October date, it's going to be later in the year. So let me give you an example. For me, my transition date was April 30th. So April 30th of this year, okay, I have accrued everything I'm going to accrue for vacation for this year, for 2022. I am now earning vacation for 2023. I earn a full complement as a full-timer with 1,250 straight time hours compensated. That would include vacations, that would include holidays, but not overtime. For part-time, it's 625 hours, but it's the same earning process. So let's just say I want to retire this fall. And Halloween seems to be a popular time to retire, October 31st. If you need 40 weeks, you'll have your 40 weeks. If you're retiring with the accrual, whenever you retire, that's what you have as long as you're 62. There's no penalty, and you continue to earn a little bit each month. So if I started full-time in January, it takes about 32 weeks at 40 hours a week to get to that 1,250 straight time hours. So I not only will get paid out my 2022 vacation if I have any left, I'll have all my 2023 vacation to be paid out. And here's where you need to make a decision, do a little cost-benefit analysis. And you know, I'm limited on time, and I'll be out here, we're going to have a little bit of lunch here in a little bit, and I'll be able to answer your individual questions. But the question you have to ask yourself is, first of all, I would work till the end of the month. Because your pension doesn't start until the first of the month after you cease employment with UPS. So there's no sense, in my mind, if you're going to maximize your earning potential till the last day, to quit on the 10th or the 15th or the 20th, unless you can't stand it. But, so, when you decide to retire, So many people think that, well, I'm going to take my vacation. And that's great. You know, people that start at the beginning of the year, I'm going to retire March 1st, I'm going to take my vacation in January and February. But what you need to remember is that you can't collect your pension in January and February if you actually take your vacation. If you leave December 31st and just take your vacation payoff, then you can start collecting your pension. It all depends upon your personal situation, what makes more sense. But again, if you're going to take your pension, or you take your vacation the last 2 months that you're working, you may be giving up, say, a $4,300 pension. You might be giving up $8,600 to do that. So I'll talk about it more when we're having lunch, but you know, Tony and the rest of us get asked this question all the time. And it really depends upon your personal circumstances, when you started, and how bad you want to get out of it. So, but we'll talk about that at lunch. Before I introduce the last speaker, you know, prior to Trevor becoming our principal officer, we never had an opportunity to have a pre-retirement seminar. And honestly, I don't know of any other local, at least in the Midwest, that has a pre-retirement seminar. And he's not much about, you know, tooting his own horn, but he's done so much for this local in the last 11, 12 years. And the reason is because he's been a fabulous ambassador for everybody in this room. And he's become not only the principal officer of this local, but he's become the chairman of the local 638 Health and Welfare Fund. He's become a trustee on the Central States Pension and Health Fund. And he's a trustee on the UPS IBT Pension Fund. And if you weren't, those folks over there, these experts, these presenters, wouldn't be here today. It's his relationship with these folks that's made this possible today. So in addition to running this local and being on the board of the Union Bank, he has the kind of relationship that's invaluable for this membership. In addition to that, he's an IBT package rep. So when UPS sits down with the union at the table that nobody else is invited, in the room that nobody else can enter, Trevor's there for us. So, you know, I'd like to take this opportunity to really thank Trevor and the membership for what he's been able to do for all of us. So without further ado, Prudential has now become empowered, and Bill Evans is the representative here, and he's going to talk about 401k.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate the few minutes today. I do have good news. So, again, I recognize lunch is coming. I am going to be brief. There's a lot of slides here, so I'm going to fly through a lot of them and try to leave you with really 5 points out of all of the slides that I'll be covering. And the other piece of good news is, with all due respect to the prior speakers, Mike and Jarrett, I really don't have to talk to you about your years of service. It'll be a simpler conversation, I think. Your years definitely have an impact on this plan, but it's all because of whether you decided to join and how much you decided to contribute. Otherwise, there's really no reason to talk about the years of service. So hopefully that keeps things a little bit easier. So we'll start out. Tom mentioned this a minute ago. You probably, well, let me stop. I'm sorry, I should have asked this. I'm going to skip entirely over enrollment because I'm assuming that those in the room, if you're in the plan, you've already joined and you've been in there for years. If you are not in the plan and want to talk about enrollment, talk to me after and I can help you out with any questions on that if you haven't joined, okay? So we've been the record keeper for the plan, the 401k plan since 2009. And those of you that are in it, you're used to getting statements from Prudential. So I'm going to start out saying we had a name change. Prudential, or I'll say Empower Retirement, on April 1st, so I'm still working through this, purchased the full service retirement business of Prudential. So after 30 years of saying I work for Prudential, I now have to say I work for Empower, so it's a little bit of a struggle. I might mention Prudential a few times, sorry, it's just habit. But this is the message that if you've logged into your account on our website, this message is popping up saying this is what happened. And there's a new logo, so that might have clued you into it. So just a little bit of information about Empower as we get started, because you may not be familiar with the brand. Empower is the second largest record keeper in the country. Now, when I say record keeping, what that means is that we take all the information from payroll at UPS, we process the contributions into your account, we maintain your account balances. If you want to transfer money, move money in between funds, we do that. You want to take a loan or a withdrawal from the plan, we do that. And ultimately, when you decide to take your money out, we'll process that distribution. So that's the record keeping work that we do. We send you the statements every quarter and so forth. When you call up, you go on the website, that's all us, okay? So Empower is the second largest in the country. Right here, you can see the last bullet actually needs to be updated. So since the purchase of the Prudential business, instead of 12 million participants, it's now 17 million participants that we record keep retirement plans for. What does that mean for you? The website that you go on to stays the same. The phone number that you call up to get plan information stays the same. There's nothing really changing for you other than please be familiar that it's a new logo and it's still the same people, the same team that have always worked on the plan are still doing that, okay? You're going to start seeing branding changes. We're working through it, so there may be some screens you still see some Prudential logo or a mention of Prudential. Others you'll see Empower. We're getting all these updates made, so it does take a little bit of time. But there's, again, nothing for you to do at this point. And all we ask is keep your contact information up to date, your email, that sort of thing. As we send out communications, it'll go to the right place. At some point next year, there'll be some more significant system changes that you'll see, but you'll get communications well in advance of that. So again, nothing right now to do, and you'll be communicating any other changes that happen. And all the changes to me will be for the positive. There's going to be even more tools and calculators and features available for you to use on the website or through the call center. So we're talking now about the plan itself. Well, let me stop for a second. Any questions about the Empower change? Okay. Let's talk about the plan real quickly. And I mentioned I'm just going to boil it down to 5 things, and I'll tell you what they are. The name change, we're already done with one. Second one is going to be, I'll say, distributions, and we'll cover that pretty quickly. Then we're going to talk about some of the tools, the investments, and some of the, I'll say, unique opportunities for tools that you have to use within the plan. Then we'll talk about the website and call center, just to remind you of it, and I'll wrap it up with something you can take. I left a stack of these brochures right on the desk as you walk out to the right. You can set up 30-minute one-on-one virtual sessions with our counselors anytime you, well, during business hours. And they can answer questions for you, help you plan. We don't give investment advice and we can't give tax information. But aside from that, they can help you with any questions you have regarding this plan. And there's one item in particular when we talk about distributions I want to give you a heads up about. So now you're going to see me fly through some slides pretty quickly. This is all eligibility. We're talking about the benefits of contributing. Let's go back up one more. So distributions. Let's start first with one of the big, I'll say, misconceptions we have. When you retire or leave employment, folks think they have to take their money out of the plan. You probably get postcards from financial advisors offering steak dinners and big lunches. Let me manage your money for you, and as soon as you retire, we'll take that money out of the plan that you have. As long as you have more than $1,000 in your account, you do not have to take it out. You can take it when you want. You can take pieces of it, you know, a partial distribution. You have flexibility there. So the only time you have to take money out is once you reach age 72. The IRS says you have to start taking a certain amount each year. There's a formula that's used, and we'll calculate that for you, and you'll get a distribution if you haven't started taking it. But don't let someone tell you that you have to take your money out, because you don't, okay? I'm going to skip a few more. One quick reminder here, if you are contributing, the limits for 2022. If you're under age 50, or up to 49, you can contribute $20,500. If you're over 50, you can contribute up to $27,000. I'm going to jump ahead to the other distribution options now. While I'm doing that, you have the option to do these as a 401k or pre-tax contributions, as well as Roth contributions. For those that aren't familiar with Roth, those go in as after tax, and the earnings grow, and you can take them ultimately tax-free as long as you're over age 59 and a half, and that money has been in the plan for at least 5 years. So this information is all on your account on the website, so I'm going through it quickly, I know, but that information is very readily available on the website, or you can talk to one of our reps by calling in. Sorry, these have a lot of building things, so it's a lot of advancing here. I didn't think there were this many clicks. So, the first one here, loans. You have the ability to take a loan from your account for specific reasons. Small print here, but basically you can take up to 50% of your account balance from the plan, and there's the specific reasons you can see are listed there with those the little bullets. Examples: you're buying your primary residence, paying for education, post-secondary education, unreimbursed medical expenses, funeral expenses, or damages to your home. There's also something that the trustees added several years ago, which is the last bullet, which is an immediate and heavy financial need, which is a little more broad, but everybody, life happens, and you might have a situation where it doesn't qualify for one of those standard loan reasons, but this immediate and heavy financial need, you can basically write a summary and say, I've got these, damage to my bill, damage to my home, insurance doesn't cover it, and if I had to pay that off, I don't have the credit card to do it, or whatever it might be, you could submit that application for a loan to help satisfy that heavy need. The other option you have is plan withdrawals. So while you're still working, you have the ability, potentially, to take an in-service distribution, it's called. So I mentioned earlier that as long as you have $1,000, you can leave your balance in the plan as long as you want. You can take partial withdrawals. You can take a hardship withdrawal while you're still working. Those same reasons that I mentioned for the loan, you can also take those just as a withdrawal, so you don't have to pay it back, right? A loan you have to pay back, withdrawal you do not. Additionally, if you are over age 59 and a half, you could take some or all of your money even if you're working, as long as you're over age 59 and a half, okay? A lot of withdrawal provisions. This is very easy to go through on the website, probably too easy because it lets people take money out of the plan too easily, but the features are there. If you go into withdrawals, it'll just tell you how much you have available and for what reasons, so it's pretty easy to navigate as you go through that. I want to talk about the distribution. So I mentioned it a minute ago. The advisors who are constantly probably going after you saying, hey, I can help you, and come to get this free steak dinner. The one thing I would recommend you seriously scrutinize when they do that is ask them questions about their expenses. This plan, given the size of it, has very, very strong buying power. The investment expenses in this plan are extremely low. The record keeping and administrative fees are extremely low. I find it oftentimes difficult where an advisor could do anything for less money than what you're paying for in this plan. They may say, don't worry, I can do this and manage the money for you, and I'll give you all the tools you need. If you need that, that's great, but just go in with your eyes wide open and ask them questions about the fees. For example, for record keeping and administration, you pay $20.50 a year. For an administrative fee, you pay $1.20 a year. And then all the investment expenses are, I'll say on average about 10 basis points, or 0.10%. So they're very, very low compared to what you'd be buying as an individual. Now, a lot of those might be things you're not familiar with, investment fees. Call our folks if you are wanting to take a distribution or roll it over to someone else. Ask our team to do a comparison. So you ask that advisor, say, give me the fees of what you're trying to get me to buy, and let me compare them to the fees in this plan. Our folks will do that for you. And then you'll have a good really good understanding of what the comparison would be. Because if you're going to have money managed by someone for 10 or 15 years in retirement, if the fees are high, all that affects is you. You're going to have less money in this account over the years because those fees do eat away at your account balance. Okay? Now I got to scroll through a few more again here. We'll get to the tools. So I've talked about the investment real quickly, a couple of tools here. The plan has a list of investment options, very small, but you'll see a broad category of asset classes. The reason they're so inexpensive is they are index-based funds, so you've probably heard of the S&P 500. That's one of the funds that's available in the plan. There's also a series of target date funds. You can see they're called Bright Horizon. And based on the year, that's the year of you would retire. So if you're planning on retiring in 2040, that's when you'd be age 60 or 65, whatever age you choose. That's the fund you would choose if you don't want to make any investment elections. That fund is professionally managed and assumes someone is going to retire that year. So it will become more conservative as you get closer to that target date. So that's an option that you have. You can also pick your own funds if that's something you're so inclined. Additionally, there's some tools that the plan offers as well. First is from Morningstar. You may have heard of them. They're an independent company that provides investment analysis and oversight. They also provide investment advice in this plan. And it's all done online. You can choose from two options here. One is advice, which is really a point-in-time exercise where you answer some questions and it will make a recommendation to say, here's how your investments should be laid out, or here's how you should be allocated. But if you want even more than that, and that does not cost you anything, that's part of the plan, that advice is free. Managed accounts is sort of the next level of that, where they will not only make the recommendation for you, they'll continue to manage your account ongoing. So as the market changes and the percentages change, they will rebalance your money back to that allocation that they recommend. They'll also recommend maybe changing your contribution rate. So that one, think about it as a third party watching over and managing your account for you and with you. That one does include a fee. That is 20 basis points or 0.20% a year. And if you have $100,000 in your account, that would cost $200 a year for that service. Again, that's all available on the website. You can choose that if you'd like to. It's completely optional, just one feature that is available to you. We talked about target date funds, and the last thing on investments I'll mention is if you are more of a sophisticated investor and you think you need more choice than what the plan already offers, there's a self-managed account option too, or self-directed brokerage it's called. This is offered through Dreyfus. So you still get that through our website. There'll be a link in your account, and you can then go and choose all sorts of different securities and mutual funds through Dreyfus. This is a brokerage account where you have thousands of mutual funds to choose from. So that is another option that's available to you, again, if you'd like to use it. There are some minimums and amounts that you have to transfer in order to do that, but if you choose to, you can transfer up to 97% of your account balance. You could put in that brokerage window if you'd like. Okay? Last thing we'll go through here, just a reminder of some of the tools. So the app, if you have it already, great. If you don't, feel free to sign up for it. It's a little confusing right now because it's still going to say have Prudential associated with you. So if you go to the App Store, it's going to be Empower/Prudential until we completely get migrated into the Empower world. We still have some old, the same technology. Same thing on the website. Website you're on does not change, has not changed. You have the ability to call our service center reps. They're available 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. You can talk to those folks anytime. And then there's a website address on here, both the Prudential site as well as a custom site that this plan has, Teamster UPS 401kplan.com. The SPD, fee information, fund information is all out there. You can get that anytime. This is just a couple pictures of the website, which we've gone through. There's some other tools and calculators that are available, and again, very easy to self-serve. Last thing I'll say on the technology piece, you know, you hear a lot about cybersecurity and fraud. That's one of the things that we ask you to be diligent about. It's important. Everybody's a target right now. The amount of money and time and resources that we spend as a company are, I can't even tell you how many times what they were 10 years ago. It's a significant job every day. And what we ask is help us with that. So keep your information protected. Follow best practices. Use some of these, we have dual factor authentication. So if you want to log in and try to do something, we're going to send you a text to the phone number we have on file before it'll let you go any further. So you can set some of those extra features up. You can put an extra password on your account. So if somebody tries to call into our call center and say they're you, they need to know what that password is before our reps will talk to them. So you can add these types of things. Just call us up and tell the folks you want an extra password on your account, and they'll do that. Register your account. Believe it or not, people who think I'm not online, I don't have my account registered, I'm safe. It's actually more risky to not register your account, because how do you know someone's gone in and tried to start creating something without, you know, they're putting in false information to begin with. At least if you have the account set up and have an email there, we're going to send you confirmation of anything that happens. If you never did anything and they try to do it, you might not be aware of it. So it's sort of counterintuitive. You think that I should, if I lay off doing anything, I'll be safe. But be aware that the fraudsters are very good. And then last thing, if you have anything suspicious, we have a fraud hotline, and that phone number is on our website as well. Last thing I do I'll mention is the first thing I mentioned, and that is the brochures that I left outside. These folks will be able to set up virtual calls with you and your spouses. All you need to do is have a phone and a computer, and you can do a video call with them. You can log into your account, share your screen. They'll help you really with anything you need to do. Like I mentioned earlier, they'll help you do a comparison of what this plan offers versus what maybe some financial advisor is trying to sell you, so that you are well informed and educated about what's out there. So that was very quick, I hope. And I'll stop and just see if there's any questions at all, and we can wrap up. Yes?
When you're on your website and you have your estimated monthly income, are you taking into consideration Social Security too and pension, or is it just income?
So that calculator, the retirement income calculator, would be based on information that you input the first time. And you can make the choice whether you want Social Security included or not. So that's just a box you can check. You can also include other assets that you have. You can include a spouse's 401k as well. So if you want to get a picture of everything you have, so you can include your pension, you can include a spouse's 401k, you can include a savings account, military pension, or you could just do it based on this 401k balance alone. So you've got a lot of flexibility on what goes into that calculation. Okay? Thanks, good question. Okay, thank you very much for your time, everyone. Have a great day. Enjoy lunch.
Now, we're gonna hear from the UPS pension fund, and we have Jared Hinson from the UPS fund, so give him a
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to turn around because when I was down there, I was stuck looking to the right, but you guys are stuck looking to the right. So now I get to switch my view to the left now. I'm going to look up there because if I look here, I have to have glasses. I don't know with glasses. So I'm going to start out with just one quick question. And if any of you were in the last presentation where we were over at the other local union, I asked a question about part-time and full-time in the audience. I do that for a reason. The reason primarily is, as you've heard in the prior presentations, there are differences between full-time and part-time. I'll draw correlations to what is similar between the two statuses, and then I'll also make specific reference to the differences. So first of all, show of hands, who is currently part-time? So a much larger number this time around than last time I spoke with the group. Okay, and the rest of you are full-time, I'm assuming. Okay. All right, so out of the full-timers, the rest of you, how many of you were part-time at one point in your career? Okay, all right. Now I know what to talk about. Okay. And this is what we're going to talk about. We'll touch on the UPS IBT plan, the full-time plan. We'll touch on the UPS pension plan, which is the part-time benefit we're talking about. And then I will go into information on the retirement calculator. I heard two different presenters talking. I heard 3 to 6 months. I heard 2 to 3 months. I heard 60 to 90 days. I heard different time frames for when you need to do things. So it can become a bit confusing when you start hearing all those different thresholds or those different lead times. So I'll try to bring some of that in as far as commonality, but I am in no way changing anything either of the prior two speakers said with regards to their specific programs. But I will tell you specifically for the UPS retirement programs, both the UPS pension plan and the UPS IBT plan, we're going to be looking for that 60 to 90 day lead time. And the way that you can work through that more quickly, so if you find yourself in a situation where you have 20 days or you made your mind up your last minute to retire, sometimes life happens and you weren't really planning to retire 2 to 3 months from now, but maybe 2 to 3 weeks from now that happens. We deal with that all the time in our office. And so when talking about the retirement calculator and the application process, I'm going to focus on why you can do things quickly if you have a last minute change where all of a sudden you are faced with maybe making that decision. I can't change anything as it relates to the other two speakers, but I can give you some insight as far as how it will help you with your retirement monies. So we'll start with the next slide, which is just to talk a little bit about the UPS IBT pension plan. This is the full-time plan. And I usually focus on this because the part-time plan is different, much lower numbers. It is, it's not necessarily 1/2 of the full-time plan, but some people think that's the case. But what I want you to understand with the full-time plan is that there are two different types of credit that we're tracking for you. And this is a source of a lot of confusion for individuals because they'll call our office or they'll send us an email and they will tell us, I've been with UPS for 30 years and I want to collect my 30-year service pension. Well, 30 anniversaries is an accomplishment, right? And congratulations on your 30-year anniversary. And if you're a 30-year safe driver, congratulations and thank you. Those are commendable accomplishments. But you have to remember that the UPS IBT plan isn't measuring based on your anniversary. The UPS IBT plan is measuring service based on the number of hours you're working in each calendar year. So if your hire date's in November, then you probably don't have much service in that calendar year until you start over in January with your hours reset to 0, and we count how many hours, or in the case of service pension credit, how many weeks are you getting paid in that year. So those two items are very important. One more distinction to draw your attention to is service pension credit is the basis of whether or not you qualify for a service pension. Individuals get concerned when we tell them that you have 30 years of service credit, you may have 30.2 years of service credit, but you do not qualify for a 30-year service pension. It's because the rest of that story is, while you have 30.2 years of service credit, you may just have 29.8 years of service pension credit. Those are two different factors. So you have to know which is which when it comes to calculating your benefit. Now you can study this, you can learn everything about the plan, and some of you probably have. But bottom line is you don't have to know all this, you don't have to remember everything I tell you. It's in your SPD. Recently an SPD was mailed to the full-time plan, and it does cover this topic right here very well. It's also on the retirement calculator. And in addition to that information telling you how the plan works and giving you background description of the plan and these service tracking mechanisms, you can also see your current profile. So you can go look and see on the retirement calculator how much service pension credit you have and how much service credit you have. Those are two very important pieces that if I don't connect with you the rest of the conversation and you're getting ready to retire and you're trying to understand, am I eligible for a service pension? Because that's what most people are shooting for in the full-time plan. It's that service pension that seems to be the threshold that gets that individual to, yes, I'm ready to retire. So if you're looking at service credit, that's not going to help you with your service pension. You have to look at service pension credit. So know the difference between those two. And I'll pause there momentarily in case I've created any confusion as related to those two. No questions? Okay, I'll go ahead.
Okay, I mean, it's exactly what you told me is what I have on my retirement calculator. My service credit is like a year and a half higher than my service pension credit. Now, when I called the pension office, they said, relax, don't worry about it, because we'll go by the higher of the two when we're calculating. Now, it's my understanding that you use the service credit, the 1801 hours, when you're calculating the accrual method of a pension payout, and you use the service pension credit when you're calculating the service pension type of payout.
Correct.
And then you give us the greater of either pension.
Correct.
You don't use the higher of the credits to calculate both methods.
That is
correct?
Absolutely correct.
So what they
if-
told me out over the phone, don't worry about it, we'll use the higher number, is not correct.
Well, I wasn't on the phone, I don't know the
Well, right,
context
I'm
of the
just
conversation. But I will tell you, if you left that conversation thinking that we're gonna use the larger of the two service credit or service pension credit numbers, no. We use, there are gonna be some of you in this room who we're gonna run 4 different calculations on you, 4 different formulas to figure out what benefit is the largest benefit for you. To simplify things for purposes of this conversation, because it doesn't apply to everyone, we are gonna look at the service credit, calculate the accrued benefit, the normal benefit, which is what you're referencing. And then on the other hand, we're gonna look at your service pension credit, and we're gonna calculate your service pension. Then we don't look at it as far as age 65. We start with it as a normal retirement age, which is age 65 for this plan. And then what we do is we look at, well, if you're retiring at age 57, what is that regular, normal retirement benefit at 65? If we apply early retirement factors, what is it worth at age 57? We compare that number to what is the service pension worth at age 57. And we pay you the larger of the dollar amounts. We're not using interchangeably service answers in multiple formulas. The service answers have specific definitions and they have a specific use. So if you walk away from a conversation or someone on my team says, yeah, don't worry about it, we're going to use the larger, we're going to give you the larger of the two. If they didn't say it correctly, my apologies. But what they mean to say is you will get the larger dollar amount out of any formula we calculate for you as of that start date. So if you tell us you want your benefit to start as of June 1, 2022, you might have 3 formulas. We're going to pick the one that pays you the largest amount. So that's how the benefits are set up.
I don't want to monopolize
Go ahead.
it, but,
That's fine.
are these numbers, did they all start January 1st, 2008?
Yes.
So these are being totaled from January 1st, 2008?
Just for this plan?
Right, because anything prior to 2008 was a number that was, whatever you had.
Correct.
Central states plan.
Correct.
That gets added.
So the number you see on your profile in the retirement calculator, the numbers we use in the calculator, the numbers we use to tell you what your benefit amount is, it's your entire career. Central States tells us what you had as a 12/31/07. We use that number and build on it 1108 later. So the UPS IBT plan, for those who may not remember, maybe you were hired or moved into the full-time plan after 08, the UPS IBT plan didn't exist prior to January 1, 2008. Once the plan came into existence, we started with what I call startup values. And Central States gives us the information. What was your accrued benefit as of 12/31/08? I'm sorry, 12/31/07. So January 1/08, if they told us you had 12 years of service credit, we build on that based on the hours you work each calendar year thereafter. Correct. And if they told us you had 12 years of service pension credit, we start adding service pension credit based on that schedule. If you work at least 40 hours, paid 40 hours every year, plus, then you're going to get another year of service pension credit.
So if the two different years, if the two numbers differ by a year and a half, like in my case, then the difference must have came from 2008 on, because the base is the same that you're adding upon prior to 2008, correct? If you had 12 years of credit prior to 2008, then you go add on.
There are a number of reasons. It could be that the numbers were different as of 12/31/07. That's not as likely to be the case as an individual may have some leaves of absence in their history. And I don't want you to answer for the crowd or not in any way, shape, or form if you have leaves of absence, but sometimes leaves of absence can affect a person's profile. For example, if you are tracking things by weeks and for 26 weeks of the year you weren't there, well, that's 26 weeks that is not in your history. So you can only get a maximum of 26 weeks in that calendar year if you work the rest of the year, let's say. But in that 26 weeks of work, maybe you made up some hours. Maybe you have overtime hours going in there. So then your hours for service credit may outpace your service pension credit, or vice versa, depending on how that works out. Because you have two different variables, it really is unique to the profile. So depending on what your profile looks like, there will be a reason why there's a separation in the two numbers. That's why I tell you to go look at your profile on the retirement calculator. You'll know where you stand each year. Okay? Yes, sir.
My example is probably a good example. I started full-time in September. I'm at 30 years right now. My birthday is in June. So when I sit on the calculator and I just don't want to put in a month, I just put in 30 years. Because I started in September, that first year really isn't vested, correct? I mean, following this calculation, I doubt I have 1,800 hours, and I wouldn't have 40 weeks.
Correct.
So I'm really at 29 years right now as far as the pension.
You might be at 29 and a partial year, which would be my guess, because if you started in September, and it really depends also on time prior to January 108, because you have to remember the Central States setup is a little different in the past than today's setup, because Central States gave you service based on what? A contribution actually had to be made to your account. Account in air quotes, even though I don't like air quotes, right? So Central States being a contributory service structure, they're only granting service not based on hours working, they're based on contribution hours or the contribution UPS made on your behalf. So if that time you described is prior to 2008, you may have been a casual or a seasonal, and maybe there were no contributions for a portion of that time, and even though you worked for 3 months, you may not have any contributions. Maybe you didn't attain seniority, maybe you were during a seasonal period. All that stuff goes into that pre-2008 time period that can affect some of these conversations we're having about service as well. Go ahead.
And then real quick, the retirement calculator that's on there, I've used that several times, that takes all this into account?
Yes, absolutely.
So once you receive your confirmation letter, and it gives you your amounts, that, it says in there was something in there about it'll be reevaluated 6 months later.
That's correct.
So what would happen? I mean, so I'm gonna retire with my 31 years service pension, so it says $3,900 plus whatever I had part-time. Could that be less 6 months from now for some reason?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question so everyone hears this, because this is a very important item to understand. I don't know, well, let's say that you're applying 60 to 90 days before your last day work with UPS. I have no way of knowing, my team has no way of knowing, the retirement calculator has no way to know, and even you do not know what happens for the next 60 to 90 days. If you're close to a threshold, meaning that you cross that 31-year threshold in the next 60 to 90 days, then it's a little bit of a roll of the dice for a couple reasons. If everything goes according to plan, the benefit won't change. It'll be exactly what your estimate is, because we have to estimate that next 2 to 3 months of work that hasn't occurred yet, correct? Okay. If something happens, maybe you get short-termers disease, and you don't want to show up for work the next 3 or 4 weeks. You're ready to retire. You're practicing to be retired, so you stop coming to work. If that happens, there's no service accrual. And if you were pushing right up against the threshold at that last day, you might come in under that 31-year threshold in your example. And yes, if that happens, and you've already left, and we recalculate your benefit once we get all the trailing payroll information, if you don't have 31 years of service, we drop you back to the 30 year, and you would lose money in your monthly pension.
So, I know this isn't my start date for full-time was June 3rd, which you need 20 weeks.
Correct.
To get in this year.
Okay, can I stop you real quickly right there before you finish that question? He just referenced 20 weeks. That is the other reason why when you start looking at why those two service amounts differ, you get 0 credit for the first 19 weeks under the service pension credit tracking. When you get your 20th week in a calendar year, that's when you will start being given credit or granted credit for your service pension credit. And it starts at 6 months. So your 20th week in the new calendar year, you go from 0 to 1/2 year of service pension credit to add to whatever you had going into that calendar year. That is why there are very few service pension retirees that retired during the first 15, 19 weeks of the calendar year. Normally, you'll find May becomes a target month for service pension retirees because they need that next 6 months to cross the threshold, possibly to 31 years. And by working 20 weeks into the new year, they get an extra 6 months of service pension credit, and that gets them across the finish line. And then they retire in either May or June, and they won't be here the rest of the year. So always keep that. I'm glad you brought that up because we hadn't talked about it yet, but it started your question. That 20 weeks is very important. So if you're looking at December 31, I survived my last peak season. In your mind, you're thinking, I don't have to do this again. That's great stuff, right? So the next thing you're looking at is, well, I only need another month or another couple weeks to get my service pension. Keep in mind, if you don't have it made that threshold that you were looking for as a 12/31, you're looking at a retirement that's probably going to be sometime toward the end of May or early June. Okay? Now I'll let you finish your question. Thank you.
So any week's vacation, counting towards that 20 weeks also?
So this is typical. The vacation payoff is not going to count, okay? Because that's activity after you terminated. Okay, so you've already left the company and those are vacation payoffs. There can be all kinds of activity there. The program is looking at calculating your vacations through your last day. Now, I don't know how everyone feels about this. We have different people with different opinions. We've heard them all, right? The fact is, the easy way to make sure this works and you don't come up short, especially if you're trying to run out the door when the clock ticks 31 years, because we have people that won't do that, and I'm just picking on you for purposes of this example, then you would probably want to schedule vacation time so that all that time counts and is in the bank prior to your termination date, prior to your official retirement date. Because when you start looking at payoffs that come in after the fact, there's nothing in our world that's really taking that into account. So it's looking at what did you have when you left. That's the line in the sand.
The vacation I took in February, when I wouldn't count towards the 20 weeks.
But if you took vacation in February and retired in May, it absolutely does count for your 20 weeks. So if you have, let's just say, 6 weeks of vacation in the bank, and for the first 20 weeks of the year, you took 6 weeks vacation and you worked 14 weeks, you've got your 20 weeks, you're good to go.
Right, that's just 1 hour worked in that week.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, I don't see that very
So
often.
if you go until June, it shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Time off because of on-the-job injury covered by comp, does that, them weeks and hours count towards this?
Yeah, you have, you can have up to 40 weeks of comp time. I mean, it's spelled out in the SPD and the plan terms. So if you unfortunately are injured and you can't work for the 40 weeks in that calendar year, then there is a one-time allowance for that comp coverage. On the disability, if it's a non-work related deal, and unfortunately, say a car accident or something like that, and you're out for half a year, the plan grants up to 4 weeks of time for service pension credit in that situation.
When you say one time in your.
Meaning that if your disability or your workers' comp goes for 3 years, unfortunately it's a really serious situation, you're out for 3 years, it's just a one-time 40-week allowance.
Thank you.
That was my question. So 20 years ago, I was out for, that long, let's say, 40 weeks. So that was the one time?
Well, if you were out again today, not that I'm trying to coach anybody, but if you were out again today, then 20 years ago doesn't matter to us. We're going to look at what happens today. But your one-time deal 20 years ago, because of the time period that you've defined there, that's something that's in the central states number. So we wouldn't have record of it.
During the UPS's pension plan.
Okay, all right.
Let's say it was happening.
Yeah, if it was UPS pension plan time, then yeah, it should be in our records.
That counts towards the service credit hours also?
Yes. Yeah, up to 1801 on the workers' comp and then up to 190 hours on the disability. So disability is a much smaller slice. Usually disabilities are associated with, you sprain your ankle or you need 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And so the disability isn't typically as long as a leave of absence maybe as a workers' comp injury, because it might take you a little longer to recover, depending, like, for example, drivers may be in an auto accident, unfortunately, and if that happens, you might be out for a little longer period of time.
So, I went to the calculator one time, just because your guys are old, retiring, and I wanted to do my calculation, but I put in all my information, I get nothing. It doesn't work. I can't pull up the calculator. And the guy sitting next to me said it might have something to do with FMLA.
You get a blank screen, or you get
It
a...
just says it won't, basically, you go on the website, and just, you put in whatever, and nothing comes up.
If you have FMLA, it won't automatically calculate on the calculator on the line. You have to have like a request in. For some reason, they have to make sure that your FMLA, it just flags it as FMLA and then it won't give you the calculation. So you have to request the calculation.
But it does return an answer in terms of it gives you words. So I'm trying to understand what you're describing, because FMLA is not specific to any sort of event in the retirement calculator. I will go ahead and tell you, if you're on a leave of absence of any kind, workers' comp, disability, FMLA, personal leave, whatever it might be, military leave even. If you're on a leave of absence, and military leave has its own special rules that we have to follow. Once you return from military leave, we have to go in and adjust things. No 1801 or 40-week limit on the military leave. It's covered by USERRA, so there are protections there for uniformed service members. And so there are other things we have to do for military leave. But if when you visit the calculator, you've had a leave of absence within the past 12 months, you are likely to encounter a message that allows you to do one thing, and that is you can run your benefit calculation as of right now. If you project into the future, it will not project into the future. So I will go ahead and make that point clear now. If you have been on a leave of absence recently, especially if you've been on a leave of absence in the calendar year, then it would not project anything going forward. It would just take the answer, your service profile that you're looking at on the retirement data tab, and it would then give you an answer based on that only. It will not project any service as if you're going to continue working. Now back to the, it just is a blank screen is what you're telling me?
Well, yeah, just as I can't calculate whatever.
Does it tell you it can't calculate, or is it just a blank screen? I'm trying to figure out what you're telling me.
It's not a blank screen, it's just.
Okay, all right, talk to me afterwards. Because it gives guidance. Whenever it's a leave of absence situation, it gives guidance that you need to contact the office, or it will not project. But if you're telling me that sometimes this is the case, and I don't know what it is, and I don't understand exactly what you're describing yet, but there are security settings. Each individual out here has a computer or a tablet or whatever, and you have security settings on those pieces of equipment. And if you're blocking a pop-up, if you have pop-up blockers in place, that could cause problems too. I've seen that, but that's not a blank screen. It's just telling you you're getting an error message. So,
Well, I mean, I've had coworkers get into the calculator on a work computer, and then I try it.
okay.
Still
Well,
won't calculate.
I have a laptop right here. I'm gonna let you try it so I can see what happens. If you really want to be full disclosure type of person, we can have you come up here and put it on the screen. No, I wouldn't do that to you. We'll wait and do that afterwards. Yes, sir.
Again, when I was talking to the pension office, I just want the members to know, correct me if I'm wrong. When you go on the screen, there's a place you can select to look at your year-to-date hours of service, and service pension credit, service credit. Actually, it's just service credit, it's service pension credit. But it'll say totals as of, 4/17 or whatever the current date is. But I believe they're like 2 months behind technically. They
Usually about
March.
It's
So
usually
when you're looking at your numbers.
It's usually 4 to 8 weeks behind because we receive the payroll data. Like for example, this is the first Saturday of May. Well, we're receiving any payroll data that's been processed in April or earlier and sent to us. We're loading the payroll data, but we're only processing the payroll data that's dated March 31 back to March 1. Okay. We only process 1 month's worth of data at a time, given the large populations, and I administer multiple plans, one just these 2 plans. And so all the records we get from payroll just the sheer volume of processing, we have it broken into monthly processing. So in May, the first weekend in May, we're processing the March data. The first weekend in June, we will process the April data. Now, I'm sure, you don't have to show your hands, but I'm sure someone in this room has had a payroll correction at some point in their career. So when you have a payroll correction, it might be dated back to February. Well, we're not processing February data the first weekend in May. We loaded it, but then the third weekend in May, we have to go back and basically rebuild your whole history to account for whatever that correction was in February. So we're programmed to do all that. So there are times when the unique nature of the facts may cause you to have to wait until 6 to 8 weeks after the actual activity that you're aware of happened. So keep that in mind. And then another thing to keep in mind is when you're running a projection, if you went to the screen, and this is an example of what we're just talking about, you can see your vesting service, you can see your service credit, your service pension credit, and you can see your year-to-date hours worked. Well, there's a date up there at the top that kind of gives you an idea of about what we have consolidated or aggregated for you. So take it with a grain of salt. It's not going to match your paycheck. It will not match your paycheck. We are behind the payroll department, okay? They have to send us information. So we are waiting on the information, and then once we get it, a couple weeks later, we process it. So we're always going to trail whatever your paycheck says. So keep that in mind, okay?
Our paycheck hour summary are correct then?
Your paycheck hour summary?
Yeah.
Is there anybody from payroll here? Because I can't answer for them, so I'm gonna assume it is, okay? I'm gonna assume it is, because they're tracking hours based on the number of pay periods that are showing up in the current year. But I don't have any knowledge.
Except for if you're off on disability, it doesn't show those hours, I know that.
Yeah, and I don't know how they handle corrections. So for example, if you get into January and you had a December correction that was taken care of in January, I don't know where they put those hours.
Work comp, I mean, it doesn't show those
Right.
hours.
Right. Yeah, none of the hours we've discussed for the comp or the disability or leave of absence, none of that would be on your paycheck. Okay? All right.
And I got an application from corporate when I turned 65 regarding retirement, since it's before they think I'm going to retire. Does that include also your part-time pension on that application, or is that only the full-time pension? I've heard about drivers retiring and not getting their part-time checks. So then they got to go back and now they have to do it separately. I don't know if that's different now or if that covers all of their pensions.
It's only different from person to person, because what I see on my end is that the individual was sent 2 applications when they're doing the paper application process, and they returned one of them. And obviously they returned the one that has the larger dollar figure on it. So your full-time plan has $3,000 on, your part-time plan has $100, and we never see the $100 application. It doesn't make its way back to us sometimes. We don't call you and say, hey, did you forget something? Because you can defer. If you're 57, you want to wait till 65 to take that part-time one, you can. You can defer. So there's no mechanism for us to say, are you sure? There's no mechanism for us to call you and say, did you forget something? So what happens there is we send you 2. When you apply, we're going to send you both your applications. If you're entitled, we're going to send you both applications. If you're entitled on that date, you get any application. If you were ever a part-time too, that's a whole different plan. That's not the UPS pension plan, that's not the UPS IVT plan, that's the UPS retirement plan, okay? We would send you that application too. You can choose to send it back or not, okay? So whatever you send back to us is what we're going to process. We will try to approve it if you provide everything we need to approve it and sign all the lines. But you can take both at the same time, most of the time. There are very, very few circumstances that I can think of, in fact, I can't think of one at the moment, where an individual would have their full-time application but not be eligible for the part-time application if that's a vested benefit.
Is the 1,800 hours based on 40-hour work week or?
No.
Hours work?
Completely separate thing. 1,800 hours is a schedule. It's just a number, okay? And I didn't say this, but if you work less than 1,800, then basically for every 150 hours, you're getting 1 month of service credit. But you can't have more than 12 months of service credit in a calendar year, so that's where it maxes out at 18/1 basically. I mean, you could work 45 hours in a week. You could work 50 hours in a week. It's all going to count towards your 1,800 hour threshold, okay?
For a Peter driver that does a mileage or sleeper team job, Because if we don't calculate all the hours in there, how is the union or the pension plan calculating that time?
We are guessing.
You guess high or low?
I just want to make sure everybody was awake, right? All right. So no, we have a methodology where if you are driving during that month, we will use an ERISA-approved standard for deeming you hours. For example, you would never receive less than 190 hours in a month. If we do not have the work hours coming from payroll, then if payroll doesn't give us the hours, we have an ERISA-approved methodology of deeming you 190 hours per calendar month that you have a payroll transaction. So if you have a feeder mileage record that comes to us and they haven't given us any hours associated with it, then we would cover you with the 190-hour credit for that month.
Hey, Jared, you have a question over there?
This relates to full-time and part-time pension. The normal retirement age for part-time is 65, correct?
Correct.
So if you retire, say, 62 with years of part-time, you can defer taking your part-time pension till 65 so you don't get the reduction?
Correct.
And how much is that reduction per year?
On the part-time plan, it's 6% per year, and that's assuming no service pension, because service pensions are different. But if you had a $1,000 benefit and you're 62, then that benefit would become $880 if you collected at age 62, because it's 6% per year, so you would lose 18%. Actually, $820. I did the math incorrectly. $820.
So you'll have two different applications, one for the part-time, one for the...
Correct. Correct. You guys do realize we're still on the first slide, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
Hey, we do have a lot of questions about the miles drivers who are having teams sound like crazy that get paid by miles, and they all want to know what kind of credit they're getting, depending on whether they drive 3,400 miles a week or 6,000. So I just wanted to hit that you're saying if you work a full-time schedule, whether it's 3,400 miles or 6,000 miles that you get paid on, the minimum hours you'll be credited would be 190.
Correct.
A month.
Yeah.
Per calendar month.
Yeah.
Now, but you can get higher than that if they turn in hours that are higher than that.
Yeah, a person could have, you could have vacation time, you could have all kinds of things that start adding into that equation.
I was trying to get to the bottom of this, and comparing people's different numbers, and I calculated that we're getting about 52 hours, or 1 hour of credit for every 52 miles driven.
I've heard that number before. I don't know if that's an official number, but I have heard that number before.
And that's about what they're turning in, is an hour of credit for every 52 miles. So
I guess it depends on how fast you drive.
So that may be correct. So that number, if they take your miles divided by 52 and they turn in that many hours of credit, which you see on your time card viewer, if the total number of hours then becomes over 190, you're given that amount. If it's less than 190, you'll still get the 190.
Yeah, we have methodology to go through all that, yes. Yes, you have a question?
Question I would have would be about, consider off on short-term disability. Late in the year, you didn't quite hit your 1,800 hours, just short, but you ended up with 20 weeks. And then you come back the next calendar year, started, and you still, by the end of that year, you had 20 weeks, but still were under 1,800 hours for 2 years in a row. You get credit for your 150 a month, and 150 hours equal 1 month of service.
The schedule itself, separate from any facts about the work profile or the work behaviors, the 150 hours per threshold, so every 150 hours is basically 1 month of service, but it starts over, the hours meter, if you will, starts over on January 1 every single year. I'll start dancing here in a second. So each calendar year, so if you finish a calendar year and you have 21 weeks or 22 weeks for the service pension credit, so you were hired in maybe July or August, and you have 22 weeks at the end of the year, on January 1, you're starting over with 0 weeks, and you have to get to a new 20-week threshold to start picking up service pension credit again. Go ahead.
Does that service pension max out at any time?
Yes. Yeah, the max right now is $4,300 on a 35-year service pension credit profile.
Say it one more time. 35?
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got 27 full-time and 6 part-time. And my calculator says roughly 3,400 for full-time, and it says $194 part-time. If I retire at age 52, or age 53, let's say, so is that $194 part-time? You would take 6% of that away per year, below 65, even if I have 33 years with the company?
No. What you're getting into, you give me the opportunity to actually go to a different slide. So, thank you, well-timed question. So, partial service pensions. With what you described, you probably are getting a partial service pension from both the full-time plan and the part-time plan. Now, like I said before, early on, half hour ago, when we were talking about the different formulas, we're going to pay you whichever formula produces the largest answer. Okay? So, in the example I have on the screen here, a little complicated screen, a little busy, if you will, but just focus on the first line there, 1987 through 2003. The person was a part-timer, and that's what the second column indicates, UPS pension plan service credit. Now, this is in the UPS pension plan. Now, I said service credit is based on hours, and service pension credit for the full-time plan is what we base our service pensions on, right? So that's why you see different titles, and this is where things get confusing sometimes for individuals. I thought he told us service credit wasn't used for service pensions. Well, that's for the full-time plan. I'm in the part-time plan, but I'm in the second column there. That's the part-time plan. So in this example, the person would have 13 years through the year 2003. In 2004, the person worked some of that year as a part-timer and some of that year as a full-timer. We call it the transfer year or the transition year. Okay? So the next line you see after the yellow highlights is 2005 through 2020. The person earns in the third column, the UPS IBT plan, service pension credit. You earn 16 years, or that individual earns 16 years. I've heard individuals describe for me how the benefits should work, and they tell me every time my part-time years should count for my full-time pension. Now, sometimes they mean we should give them full-time credit for their part-time years, and that's not what happens. But that person is correct when they tell me that the part-time years should count toward calculating their full-time benefit, and it does. And it's known as this concept of combined service credit. So in my example here, if you look at the fifth line down, which says subtotal, this person has a total of 14 years of UPS pension plan part-time service credit. You look at the third column, this person has 16 and a half years of UPS IBT full-time plan service pension credit, okay? In total, in the last column, that's 30 and a half years. You're talking about a partial service pension for both plans. Even though neither one of the plans as they stand alone qualifies for a service pension, when you take the total service in aggregate or the combined service credit, the person crosses over a threshold, right? But we have one more step we have to take before we can say you make it, okay? The last step is, do we have to adjust for more than 1 year of combined service credit being granted in a single calendar year? So go back to the 2 highlighted lines at the top of the grid. In 2004, the person earned a full year of service credit in the pension plan as a part-timer, and the person earned a half a year of service pension credit as a full-timer. 1 plus 5 is 1.5. We can't give you the 1.5, so we have to adjust that down to 1. Therefore, you see the adjustment at the end there. And so the combined service credit answer after the overlap adjustment is 30 years. Therefore, you get a partial service pension from both plans, and that will be larger than the early retirement benefit with the 6% reduction. It works out that way every time.
So the 6% reduction, well, it wouldn't apply to me because I have.
Correct. Based on what you described, I don't have your profile here in front of me, but based on what you're describing, I expect you to have a partial service pension from the UPS pension plan. And depending on if the partial service pension, when you consider all the part-time years, is larger in the IBT plan versus just a straight-out full-time pension, service pension from the full-time plan, we give you the higher of those two.
So basically, the 6% doesn't apply to somebody that has 30 years again, the 6% deduction.
I will be more specific in answering your question. The 6% would not apply if you are qualified for the partial service pension using combined service credit in the part-time plan.
This gal here, let's just say she has 20 years part-time, and she's 57 years old. Her benefit is whatever, $12 or $55. But so then would she lose 6%?
Does she have a partial service pension?
She's been part-time her whole life.
Just always been part-time, that's it? Okay, and how many years did you use in your example?
20 years part-time.
The 20 years would be subject to the reduction, yeah. The 20 years would be subject to the reduction. You have to get to 25 years to qualify for a service pension if it's pure part-time service. Did I leave anybody out here? Because I know I had a couple hands here. I got one going over there. Okay, go ahead.
Just a question. I'm in my 33rd year part-time,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably have at least 30 full-time vested, not full-time hours, but,
Right,
vested years.
right.
And if I'm 62, you're 63, do I take 6% off to 65?
How many total do you have?
Well, I should have at least 30 full vested years.
Okay, if you have 30, then you'll be the service pension, and there will be no reduction on your benefit. Perfect. So Trevor, the most important question of the day is, how much time did I really have to talk?
Well, you got enough.
Okay, okay, all right. I mean, they're full of questions, I mean, we'll keep going. Yes, sir.
Let's say hypothetically that I didn't understand some or all of what you just said. I just wanted to know what my pension is going to be.
Right.
I can just go to the retirement pension calculator and trust the number that it spits out, right?
Okay, we just answered my question, we're done. All right. You're absolutely right. You don't have to remember anything I say, and if you quote me, I think somebody's recording me, so we can go back and settle the challenge if I get challenged on anything. But obviously, anything that we talk about, I'm answering questions without actually looking at your profiles, and you're listening to me talk about things that actually is kind of mixing in terms from two different plans. If you're full-time, you don't care what I say about the part-time plan. If you're part-time, you don't care what I say about the full-time plan necessarily. And by now, you've probably forgotten everything that the Central States and the person of the 638 healthcare guy was talking about, right? So all this stuff, when you leave here, it's all like, okay, who said what, and I'm confused. So it's a very good point you're making. If you don't understand what I said, but you may have understood it 5 minutes ago, but then somebody else asked the question and confused it for you. It wasn't my fault, it was their fault, right? So if that's the case, and you want to know what you have, or you want to read about anything that I've talked about with respect to your plan, you can go to the retirement calculator. Yes, the SPD is posted out there. Now, SPD for the full-time plan was just mailed out in the past probably 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think it's on the website yet, but all the terms are the same. The only thing that will be different is the service pension amount that you might find in the one that's posted right now. I haven't received confirmation they've posted the new one here yet, but the concept is there. And also, anytime, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but anytime you see a term, like look in the middle of the screen there where it says review personal data. Anytime you see a blue font, especially with an underline, that's either A, link where you can click and go to that screen, or B, if you hover across it or click on it, it's going to give you a definition. It's going to tell you in a much faster format than what I've been doing this morning exactly what that term means. Okay? So you can go to the retirement calculator to research. If you get to the retirement calculator and you don't understand, or it's still confusing, or you want to clarify something, then you could call the team. You could call us. Okay? So you always have that option. In worst case scenario, can't get him out on the phone, or it's really busy spiking its phone volume at that moment, it is possible that you wouldn't have somebody answer that at that moment. You can also send an email to retirement@ubs.com to clarify some things. Okay. That's your hand.
So you talked earlier about, like having like a half year
It really depends. All service is measured on calendar years, okay? So if you start in August, you start in December, you start in January, we're just looking at what did you get to by the December 31 of the year you were hired, okay? Every year thereafter, except for your termination year, we're just looking at how many hours did you work between January 1 and December 31, and then we convert that to service. In your final year, if you are retiring this year, we're only going to consider hours worked from January 1 or weeks worked from January 1 through the last day you're employed with UPS. So it's a partial year calendar-wise, but you may have 40, you may retire in November. You may have the 40-plus weeks, and we give you a full year of service pension credit if you wanted to leave in November. So we always start with January 1, and we cut it off at December 31, reset the meter, and you start over with your service count each year. And then we just aggregate how many years you accrue over your working life with UPS.
I have a question that, UPS is hiring a lot of new heater drivers, some of them captain here. A lot of them have been already Teamster members, like I just talked to one the other day that has 33 years working for Cisco in California. He's a Teamster, so he has a 33-year pension there. He's hoping, does he need the best 5 years in UPS? So
yes.
The answer I can give him is yes. I told him to go on the retirement calculator, but when he goes on that calculator, it will only show him his UPS information and not any other Teamster.
There are very limited circumstances where any other employer would come into play for anything I've discussed. Very limited. Okay.
So, but basically, he needs to spend 5 years working the best in the UPS pension plan.
In the scenario you described, that individual will need 5 vesting years. And we didn't cover it on slide 1. We covered everything else about slide 1, but on slide 1, it talked about vesting service. You need 750 or more hours for the full-time plan. Okay, this is the full-time plan. You need 750 or more hours in a calendar year for that to count as a vesting year. That's important that you get to 5 years because that's the threshold for vesting in any benefit. So your example, person 33 years, some other company, doesn't matter who it is, that person is starting over when they come to work for UPS, needs 5 years of vesting before any benefit would be payable by the full-time plan.
That kind of follows my question up. So any employment I do after I retire, it used to be some criteria, you know, that you were disqualified for your pension. I could go work for another union company, I could deliver mail, anything I wanted.
Central States has prohibited employment rules that do not apply to the UPS IVT plan. It is very possible that you retire from UPS and you start collecting your benefit from the UPS IVT plan and you go work somewhere else. If when you reach 65, if Central States owes you money because they have a responsibility for part of your benefit and it's transitioned to them, if you're in prohibited employment, that may be something you have to discuss with them, and they may not pay you until you exit prohibited employment. I don't know their rules. I don't speak for Central States. We always refer the participant to.
Until 65.
But until 65, you'd be fine. Yes.
Just a follow-up question, the retirement calculator, is that only available for full-time people?
That's an excellent question because we are very close to having the calculator available to part-timers. We've had a lot of requests for that. I think probably even if it came up in the last time I visited this area, I said, we're contemplating doing that. There is definitely an interest. We have a lot of part-time employees that typically aren't career employees, so the retirement calculator isn't as interesting. The last thing, a 20-year-old is thinking about is retirement, and so there wasn't really that much interest, but we have found that with the continuing offering of Retire Online, where you can just retire online without having to get a paper application, it's becoming more and more of an interest to the overall population, so we are moving down that path as we speak. It's not that far off.
The retirement calculator, I think also it's still true if you do the multiple scenario, it does not include your part-time pension. So there can be a difference between that and whether it's a single scenario. Single scenario, I think that's the breakdown of your full-time, union, and part-time separated. I think is it still the case with the multiple ones? Why is there such a big difference? I don't think it includes the part-time, at least it did at one time.
Okay, so there are two things in your question. First of all, for a partial service pension, is it included in your part-time service? It absolutely is, even if you run the multiple scenario calculation. It's just that when you run a multiple scenario calculation, it's not giving you everything. It's not giving you all the details. Because on the screen I have here, the first screen you go to, not the one that's kind of lower right, but the one that's upper left, there's the two calculation scenarios that the question is addressing. You can do a single scenario calc, or you can do a multiple scenario calc. A multiple scenario calc is you're just looking at it and saying, you know what is my benefit if I leave at 57 versus 58 versus 59? And you can run all three of those, have an answer pop up. It's just going to return an answer on the screen. It's kind of a starting point. And then after you do that, you're thinking, okay, well, age 58 seems like kind of the sweet spot for me, so I'm going to look at 58. Then you would want to go run the single scenario calculation to start getting into the details about that. And when you run a single scenario calculation, this is what it looks like. Now, it doesn't have your spouse's benefit on here because this particular example doesn't have a spouse, so you don't have the qualified joint 50% or the 75% option that was mentioned in an earlier presentation. But lower left-hand corner there, if you put your spouse's information in the system, which we want you to do, then the calculation details, you can pull up, you can see the formulas that were used to calculate the benefit. It would show you if it's a partial service pension. It would tell you all the things that we've been talking about. So if confusion has set in, run a single scenario calc and kind of walk through that and try to connect the dots would be another avenue that you could take, or approach you could take. But the calculation details is a separate worksheet. It's going to be probably 4 or 5 pages of information that tells you a lot more about your calculation. All you get when you run a single scenario calculation or a multiple scenario is what you see on the screen. You get an answer. If you want to know more about the answer, click on the calculation details. I'll say it one more time. Calculation details are only available for the single scenario. Okay? So if you're looking to get into the weeds, why is this, why is that, what service was used, look at the calculation details. Okay?
When you said that your payroll is 2 months from now posted, does it give you the specific date that it is posted up until? Like, so if you're showing just March, these calculations actually are based on March?
See the upper left-hand corner, it may be hard to see because this is a very large room, but in the upper left-hand corner, it says 8/31/2016 in this particular screenshot. That's telling the user that we have data, all this data you see on the screen. This is the retirement profile that's on hand right as of that date. And that would be telling you that we have that much information from payroll as of that date. Now granted, if 8/31/2016 was a Wednesday, we don't have your Monday and Tuesday payroll. We don't have your time card because we haven't loaded the August information yet, as that last week of August, if 8/31 happens to be a Wednesday or Thursday or something like that. So there's a little bit of, give us a little bit of a break on that. It's close, but it's not going to always be exact because we're always running behind payroll.
But if you're doing a future calculation, it's gonna take some assumptions.
It makes some assumptions going forward. We do not assume anything about the last 6 to 8 weeks or whatever's missing. We don't assume anything about that 8-week period that's missing, or 6-week or 4-week period. We don't make any assumptions there. We only assume from today, 8/13 or 8/31, going forward. So there's again a little bit of an art there, if you will. What we do not want to do, and what we make every attempt to do, is to not assume something that would cause you to make a decision that you later regret. So we are a little more on the conservative side. If we tell you you need to work through the end of November, it's possible that maybe you only need to work through the first week of November. It is possible. But that's kind of close. So we're not going to tell you can leave the first week of November if we have any indication that might not be true. Plus, if we think you're going to work for the next 6 months based on some assumption, and then you don't, well, obviously that we can't tell that. We'll pretend you're going to work 6 more months. If you don't do that and you don't earn those weeks, then you're not going to get the number most likely that you're seeing on the screen. Okay?
So I have a question about survival spouse.
Okay.
So I have not submitted my papers yet. I have a number of conditions that, who knows, right? I'm expecting another 15, 20 years.
I think 108 was the number we're shooting for.
So if I don't submit my papers now, okay, and let's say next week I die, my wife gets how much of my pension? Does she collect?
So you didn't make it to retirement, correct?
Yeah, I have 36 full years and 7 part-timers.
Okay, so whatever the numbers are for both plans, you're vested and you have a long career and you've got some money there. but you don't get to enjoy retirement because something unfortunately happens next week, is what I heard you ask, correct? Okay. There's a pre-retirement survivor annuity that applies to spouses. Because every single person in this room who is married cannot retire without basically asking your spouse's permission for the optional form you elect, unless you want to give the spouse more in your death, after your death. You know, you can always leave more to the spouse after you pass away. But that's a different scenario, because you're not retired yet. So what protections are in place for the spouse on a pre-retirement scenario? Well, the QJSA, or that joint 50% survivor annuity, is the default. So if a person passes away at age 40, married at 40, has maybe 20 years with the company, so there's some money there. Well, we're going to pretend like that individual left UPS on that date, and we calculate an accrued benefit, and then later when the person would have been retirement eligible, the spouse will contact us at any time between early retirement eligibility and normal retirement age 65, and we will just calculate the benefit as if that person who departed, a little earlier, was retiring that day without any additional service, and we calculate the qualified joint survivor annuity, and we pay the spouse the survivor portion of that particular benefit.
Which is
50%.
It defaults to 50%.
Correct.
So if I want her to have 75%, I file my papers. Now, what's the furthest out retirement date I can put, 6 months?
60 to 90 days.
Only 60 to 90 days. So then if I decide I would like to keep working through the next contract, or see if we get any more pension.
You can't apply today and have us hold that.
Right. But plans do change, life changes.
Yes.
So let's say 89 days or 75 days from now, I decide, no, I need to work 3 more months.
If you haven't retired yet, then we're going to look at retirement eligibility, obviously, whenever somebody does something, where they turn in paperwork and then they change their mind last minute. But if you're retired, you're retired. It's a one-time, lifetime election, so be sure with what you're doing. The other thing is, if you do not meet retirement eligibility, meaning you are 2 days away from your first payment and you do not terminate, well, then you're going to be null and void. We're just going to completely ignore your application, because you will nullify your application by your actions.
By keeping working and nullifying.
Yeah, and also, because we look at it from an eligibility perspective, but we don't know till after the fact in many cases. But no application on file is going to stand if what the conditions are that you presented, the application won't stand in terms.
So I can just keep applying every 90 days?
No, you cannot. The application won't be valid, is my point. That's my point. You can't keep applying every 30 days. You can't keep applying every week. We're not going to process an application. Because if we see that type of activity, we're not going to process the application. Okay, so it would become one of those deals where if I had 40,000 people doing that, there's no way I could do that.
I can't retire until that's that.
Well, you could retire, but we're going to wait for you to terminate your employment. So if you take advantage of that 60 to 90 day process where you're constant, like every 3 weeks you're sending a new application, changing your date.
On any subsequent requests until I terminate my employment.
Correct. If we, like I was saying, if I had someone who was sending me a new application every 3 weeks, I'm going to start waiting until actually they terminate their employment. Now, I'm not going to stop you from applying, but the processing of it is starting to collect a stack of paper, like this lag, and we're going to stop processing something that clearly isn't your intention. So if you have an intention, you're telling us what that intention is, and we're going to process it. We're going to try to get you paid ahead of time. But if a person starts, applying every 3 weeks, we're just going to wait for the next 3 weeks to see if they do it again. We will start administratively monitoring that profile to see what the pattern here is, because we can't process something and the numbers are changing probably every single time you send it in. There is not a provision in any plan to put a beneficiary on file or to make a pre-retirement election. So we would prohibit, through actions, we would prohibit an individual from inadvertently imposing some sort of term on the plan. All right.
I had a question about the survivor benefit. Say I'm enrolled in my pension and receiving my monthly payout or whatever. pass away, does my ex have any rights to my pension?
So you used a bad word there, didn't you? He brought up the ex. But that really depends on what you guys agreed to do when you divorced. Because a defined benefit plan is considered a marital asset, and so a claim can be made against that benefit. So you might work for 30 years, but if you were married for 15 of those years, you may only be entitled to the full 15 years that you worked. That may be yours, but that first 15 years that you earned may be split between the two of you, depending on how your divorce decree is written. And ultimately, a domestic relations order governing the distribution of that benefit to the two parties has to be received and approved by the plan. But if you pass away and there's no domestic relations order on file, the ex-spouse has no rights to anything at that point. I'm not trying to coach you on what to do.
So we have a contract coming up. If I was to apply prior to that contract, and that's that 90 days, obviously, if it goes into a new contract, if there's a change in something, I would be under that new contract.
Yes, no, maybe.
I don't. If that 90 days is after that contract date.
Well, it depends. I mean, a contract can be ratified effective 8/1 of 2023, but a benefit provision in that contract specific to pension might not be effective until 1/1/2024. So you have to know the details. So I can't answer your question.
Right.
I can't tell you, I can't give you any guidance because that's an unknown right now. And until the plan terms are updated or amended to reflect what the CBA says, now obviously, just because it hasn't been written yet, it's in the CBA, it's been ratified, we would, merge the two intents. But I can't answer any questions like that in terms of could you retire and then be eligible for a retroactive bump up in your pension. Has it happened before? Absolutely. Has it been in CBAs where ratification date is in this year, but maybe the benefit improvement was 2 years later? Absolutely. The 1997 deal for the part-timers had a 2 year or a year and a half or so effective date change.
Thank you.
Certainly.
How much lead time does an ex need to know to get the benefits?
An X?
An ex.
Okay.
It's been through Quadro and all.
Sorry, been approved?
It's been approved.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is this is advice. This is coaching. This is whatever you want to call it. If you have a divorce, the best thing you can do, even though you may not want to if you're the UPSer, the best thing to do is go ahead and finalize everything. Don't wait, because we have, unfortunately, individuals who pass away and they were divorced 14 years ago, and there's unfinished business. And now the ex, who is the survivor, shows up at our doorstep saying, I'm entitled to the benefit. Well, we don't have anything. Creates a whole lot of headaches, right? And it's really not even understandable, except maybe you're trying to avoid attorney's fees or something. Go ahead and finish what you're finishing. Finish the end. Take care of the domestic relations order right then and there while it's fresh in everybody's mind. You can make sure that everybody agrees, because later, if you argue, guess where you end up? Back in the same old courtroom, or maybe a different location, but you're gonna have the same attorney's fees again, and you're gonna have to reopen the conversation. So go ahead and finalize it. In this situation, that's just my little public service announcement for Quadros. The situation here is you have finalized it, which is good. The order tells, you guys agreed to something, the order tells that spouse, ex-spouse, when she can commence the benefit. She can commence as early as your earliest retirement date, even if you're still working. I see that a lot. She has to wait until you commence the benefit, but no later than normal retirement date. I see that quite often as well. So it really depends on what the order says. Quadros, QDRO, Qualified Domestic Relations Order, those are unique to each individual situation. Some of them are pretty interesting, and some of them are sometimes kind of funny. But you just, whatever the order says is providing the guidance you're looking for in the question you asked.
I have no idea what she said. I find that just retired. I'm gonna be done and said, hey, look.
When you retire, she will have to commence, if she hasn't already.
Do you need 30,
She would have to, typically, she could apply 60 to 90 days ahead. You do your part, and if we see there's an alternate payee or an ex-wife, we're gonna send the information to that person and say, hey.
I don't have to deal with her.
Yeah. We have one satisfied customer. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
So following up on what I was saying earlier, being 15 years in part-time, do I got to get to a 20-year threshold to be able to qualify for health plan?
That's what I heard in an earlier conversation. So you want to verify if you need 20 years of some type of service. And I'm not answering with respect to, is it 20 anniversaries, is it 20 vesting years, because that's not my area. But I certainly would defer to Team Care and answer that question for you.
Just to answer that question, yeah. As long as they letter to get that, you'll get from you guys, say that the pension is based on 20 years or more, then that will trigger your eligibility for retirement.
So taking what Mike just said, you'd have to have 20 years of service credit in the part-time plan.
Did that answer your question? I think so. Yeah, I'm just wondering the threshold that I have to get to like, and it is, if I get to 20 years, is it from that point forward, I'm still working elsewhere? Or do I have to cover it until I'm retired? Does that make sense?
Not really, in terms of, the working elsewhere doesn't have anything to do with anything, so that's not relevant. If you made your 20-year, let's say 20 times, $55, and that's your benefit amount, there's your 20 years of service credit, and then that gets reported to Central States, and they would qualify you as an eligible person, provided you have whatever age requirement was met. So the 20 years of service and the 55, I believe, is what I heard from the earlier presentation. So, and again, I'm not quoting Central States or Team Care rules, I'm just repeating what I heard with Mike's acknowledgement of that. All right.
The UPS IBT plan basically guarantees the payout of the Central States past 65 in case the Central States plan fails. The UPS IBT picks up the difference, correct? But with the recent legislation, is there any chance of that being negotiated out on future CBAs that they'll no longer guarantee that on the assumption that Central States will no longer fail?
I will answer that, as I don't think that anybody would even discuss that. I can't tell you what the future holds, though, but the fact that it's not really an issue anymore, given the legislation, I don't know why it would be a topic in any negotiation, but I don't know.
But right now, it's still a fact.
Oh, you'd have to, the UPS IBT plan would have to be amended to take that provision out, and there's no plans for taking that provision out. Don't know what the future holds for anything, but that's the answer to your question, immediate future. So what I have on the screen here is Retire Online. When you are ready to retire, I highly recommend you use Retire Online. I'm going to talk about just a few points here that I wanted to make, probably get to about a half hour ago, just before I end this. But you've had really good questions. I appreciate the participation. It's been a really good exchange here, and I hope I was able to provide you information to help you as you get ready to move to that retirement stage. But certainly, if you have other questions, retirementeps.com email address, you can send them there. You can call the team. Look at the retirement calculator. Look at your profile. Look at your SPD. We'll do a little homework and make sure you have things in check and you understand them, because it is a lifetime election. There's no do-over. No do-over. Once you make that election, within some very, very, very tight constraint, you don't get to change anything. So just keep that in mind. Understand that when you make that election, treat it like it's, until death do us part. People change that. That is changeable. We probably talked about the X's and everything. This is more difficult. You are less likely to be able to change that phrase till death do you part in these pension worlds, these pension decisions. And I don't have flexibility, maybe healthcare does, they may have some opt-in and opt-out, there's no real opt-in, opt-out, or change selections and that type of stuff, so make sure that you know what you want. And that leads me to this statement. If you haven't had a physical, your spouse hasn't had a physical, you don't want to wait till after you retire to find out you have a medical issue and it's not a good prognosis. You want to make sure before you retire, before you make that election, that you both are, at least for today, you have no warning signs that, you maybe should elect a 75% option. Or maybe you shouldn't elect a survivor option, you should go with a single life. That's a very serious type scenario, but it has happened multiple times where individuals retire within 6 months, there's a health issue. I don't know in all cases whether or not the person had a physical before they retire, but don't overlook the possibility that you make your election based on a health report card too. Life insurance companies want you to prove you are worth insuring, correct? When you choose the JS50 option or the JS75 option, you are making an insurance decision. You are making a lifetime bet or decision when you choose that option. Make sure that you hold yourself to the same standard that the insurance company holds you to. What kind of health report card do you have? If you don't have a checkup, you probably need to do that. And because your spouse is involved, you want your spouse to do the same thing. So I would highly encourage you to take advantage of that 60 to 90-day window, or even start earlier, 6 months, 3 months, beyond that, whatever. Make sure you're taking advantage of these healthcare benefits you have and make that part of your retirement decision, okay? All right, when you get ready to retire, you don't see very many HR people running around anymore. The world's different now, 2 years later, right? Between COVID and some other changes within the company. There aren't as many, maybe your lifetime partners you've worked with here at UPS. Maybe you always had a go-to person. Maybe your management team has changed up. They have some different duties now with respect to offboarding activities. All that stuff is very factual. One of the biggest problems we have with individuals getting their benefits paid on time is they don't apply on time. Use the 60 to 90-day rule. Apply 60 to 90 days ahead of time. Don't worry about the back and forth with paperwork. Go to Retire Online. That little icon in the top up there, that's a video. It walks you through. It's about a 2.5-minute video. It gives you everything you need to know with the text there and then the text on the next screen. There are instructions. Use the system. If it tells you you're not eligible, it's probably because you have a quadro. Because if you have a quadro, it can't be calculated by the system. That's manual. It'll have to come to us. But it'll tell you that. And if you have anything else that was weird about your history, it may allow you to go ahead and complete the application. But when you finish the online and you hit submit, it comes to my team. They review it for any unusual circumstances. If there is something that affects your benefit amounts, you're making a decision, right? We're going to contact you and tell you, let's discuss this. Your benefit amount is X on the screen. This is the situation we have, so it's a little bit different than what you understand. Because up or down, it could affect the decision you make, right? And we know we're estimating a little bit, and we have a little bit of tolerance for some movement there, but I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for that type of movement. It has to be very close. So that's part of you doing your job timely. Using Retire Online, you input your bank information, you input your spouse's information, you input your tax withholding, you'll do all that online. You don't need a piece of paper. You don't even need 3 different applications if you've been in 3 different plans. It'll all happen right here. Okay? So that is a marketing campaign, if you will, for 5 minutes about the Retire Online. You need to utilize it. There's not as much help available today when you have questions. So to have a paper application and then partially send that back, partially complete it, send it back in, is doing nothing but further prolonging your retirement application process. So go here, follow the instructions, and you should find it, most people find it very simple to follow along and complete the process. Once you finish, you get through all the pages there that I just talked about, you will get to the very end. You have a status. If you do the Retire Online and you hit send, that comes to us. You do the printing, you do all the submit, that comes to us. You do the print, sign, and send the confirmation statement and any documents like your driver's license, your marriage certificate. You send that stuff to us. You can see the status. You can go back and visit the calculator and see the status of whether or not we've approved it. So you can check in real time, because when we save it and we say we've approved your driver's license and your marriage certificate and your confirmation statement that you sent in, it would show up that you could see that we've approved at that point. Then you know the letter's on the way to you to say, congratulations, you know your benefit payments will be made on or about the first week of June. Dollar amount, you're gonna have that letter for the other guys that have spoken today, those healthcare reasons, and you're finished. You're not sitting there waiting on a package from us. You're not sitting there going back and forth, waiting on when will I get my application. So you speed it up. And the best way to describe it, for everybody else who has sent in a written request to us, you just leapfrog them. You just cut in line. You are ahead of them. Someone who mails something in will probably get something back from us in a 2 to 3 week time period on average for a mailed copy of something. Then you get it, then you review it, then you send it back to us, then you're in line again with every other person that's mailing things in. By doing the retire online, you could be finished within a day. Now, that's a little bit extreme. If you do everything, we get back to you, approve in 1 day, but certainly within 1 week. But I've seen them in 2 days have been done, a big plate. You have your answer, you have it a lot more quickly, is my sales pitch to you. So use retire online. If you get stuck and you can't use it, okay, back out of it. Until you hit submit, we don't get anything. And until you send in the confirmation statement, you're not retired. Until we have everything, you're not retired. So finish the process, okay? Yes, sir?
Back for the part-timers again. If they don't have the retirement calculator available, how do they find out, whether they're close to the amount of time? How do they get that information out of HR?
So until we get the part-timers on there, if you are full-time, your part-time is on there. But if you're part-time, you're not accessing this yet. So in the meantime, you'll continue to do what you've done, and that is you can send us an email request, say I'm going to retire, and generally the simplest way to do it, because no one ever gives us all the information we need when they send us an email, just ask for a retirement benefit request form. So send an email, give us your name, your employee ID, and just simply say, I want a retirement benefit request form. It will get emailed back to you. Once that's emailed back to you, then you complete that. That will be all the information we need to then prepare a packet for you and send it to your home.
And so that's the process for part-timers now. Do you have an estimated date on when the retirement calculator will be available for that?
End of summer.
Hey, Jerry, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
So if I have come up with, let's say I retire and I take the 75% social life, and my wife would predecease me, does my benefit go back to the whole?
Not in the part-time plan, there's no reversion.
Okay.
And the full-time plan, you have a feature that if you select a specific option, and Tom's question has to do with, he chose the 75% option, and then the spouse passes away. Well, if that's the case, there is a restoration feature in the UPS IVT plan that it would restore the benefit to the single life annuity amount upon us being informed of the death.
Is there a time frame? Is there a time frame on that?
That applies to the Central States portion.
Yes. Yeah, they take, the elections made, they take the election from us. Our calculations coordinate, it's a joint effort. So it starts with us, and then we pass information to them, and yeah, they would honor the same setup.
You go in the retirement calculator and you keep hitting dates, putting in dates until you find your number, say $3,800. Say it turns to $3,800 on July 15th. Should you retire on July 16th, wait 2 weeks, 1 week to be safe?
September 30th. You can put things in there and guess, and it's not, I mean, that's called planning, right?
Well, it's not a guess if the calculator's telling you on July 15th it turns to $3,800. That's not my guess.
If you're running it today, I'm assuming we're running this calculation today?
Right.
Okay.
Say I worked every day from now till then.
And that's the part, that's the guess. We're assuming you will work every day. And if it's true, then you're okay.
Yeah.
But if it's not true, then you might not be okay.
Okay.
So my point is, if you're trying to, as I say, you made your 30th year at 12 o'clock today, and that's when you're retiring, because we do have some people that do that occasionally, that sometimes backfires. Build yourself a little bit of a cushion there. But no, I'm confident that if you run a projection and it says on July the 15th that you're at that $3,800, and then you work every single day, a regular day, there's no change in your behavior, you'll be okay. But if you don't follow the pattern of behavior that we expect from you, then you've basically undone that, the quality of that estimate. I would ask if there are any more questions, but I'm afraid to. Thank you for your time.